Okay, so Mobius and I had just finished listening to some videos and watching some stuff and recording podcast 22.
Now, before I even go through, I've decided there's way too much blood in my alcohol system. This will be remedied as we read.
That's right, because you're like a robot. You're like Bender.
Mm-hmm.
You either drank too much or not enough. I forget how it works with you.
Some people are born with an alcohol deficiency, and therefore I have to supplement it with alcohol to bring myself back up to normal.
Right, that makes sense. So, Mazza long ago, and for those of you who clamor for fic requests and are very pissed at me, Mazza's a very dear and close friend, and requested this before most of the other requests started. And I'm not giving it a full read anyways, so, it's different than the requests. Sort of. That's how I'm justifying it to myself in my crazy brain.
See, the way you put it is that you have the very high production value. Your definition of read is the high production values of, past sins or My
Right.
Little Dashie. My preferred reading is I get drunk and start trashingly slur things together and call the English language.
So, in line with that thought, and believing that radio has... I've been listening to An Equestrian Invasion too much. And that's... When you say that I have high standards, you should see what Equestrian Invasion is like, because I will never do that again. Those of you listening, I will never do that again. It will turn out wonderful, and I will never ever do it again, because it's too much goddamn work.
I gotta experiment a little. I'm gonna grab another beer.
Celestia banished that thing to the moon. I love it. It's going to be fantastic. I'm excited for it. But
Dude, how
so much
awesome would
work.
it be that Celestia just rips through the time-space continuum just to banish your fanfic to the moon, which it becomes a moon artifact like the lunar lander.
Sweet. There's actually an REM cover that came out a day or two ago called We Put a Mare on the Moon. I will have to show that to you later. You look pretty stoked about that.
So, the fact that if that ever happened, what does it say that my first prerogative would be? I must locate Fluttershy and Luna and both give them a hug.
I'm down. I go through waves as to who I like the most, and honestly, Brono brought up to me that I've treated, especially in MLE, I've treated Celestia very unfairly, and honestly, I like her quite a lot. I think she's kind of wonderful, and
I like Trelestia, I like Molestia, I like every other form of Estia, except the one portrayed in the show.
she's okay. What I really love is the Celestia in Butterscotch Sunday's work, in Much a Hoof About Nothing.
Oh god.
Yeah, you laugh, but
Butterscotch Sunday, you write amazing fics. Keep doing what you're doing.
I hope that someday, because this is... Mobius and I enjoy recording like this, and my other friends have been asking to come back sometime. There are certain fics that we will be revisiting. We will probably finish up the Elements of Awesomery at some point, especially because Present Perfect has said he will be putting in Whiskey Face as a bar in one of the future iterations. Now, I also really want to do Much a Hoof About Nothing at some point, but I think that it's one of those that should involve other people. I strain to try to give it a full reading. While Butterscotch Sunday is an amazing writer, I don't think that I could sit alone by myself and read that. I would just feel too much like I needed a hug.
Depends which one of her fics that you are reading.
If you've read Much a Hoof About Nothing, it's light shipping, but it's so well done that it makes you really miss being in a relationship. So it's kind of... Yeah, it's super depressing if you're not in a relationship at the present moment, which is why I need friends here when I record that.
Gotcha.
So, you're all familiar with Mobius, you're all familiar with me, and you know that all of us have a pretty long-standing history, I say all of us, including the people who aren't here right now, of playing Dungeons & Dragons, and Mazza has requested that we read what is apparently referred to as Some Ponies Play D&D, but the original title is The Epic Quest of the Brave Warriors in Search of the Mystic Treasure of the Forgotten City in the Distant Realm of the Lost Lands of the Fearsome Dragon King of Death.
I like it.
It's
Me
gonna...
gusta.
Alright. Grimstar the Black, mighty wizard of the southern deserts, squinted into the hazy distance of the enchanted forest. He was tall and thin, and the dark indigo robes he wore were covered with eldritch symbols. Sweat beaded on the jet-black skin of his forehead as his staff pulsed with mystic energies, scanning the landscape for danger. After the mysterious disappearance of their prodigal companion, He was determined to defend his party. They were 5 strong. Now, himself, the elvish rogue, the halfling cleric, the bard, and the barbarian, who was now approaching the wizard with the carcass of a stag slung over his shoulder.
"Ho, Grimstar," he said. "There is much sport in these woods." He was a mountain unto himself, with rippling muscles and broad shoulders, and a dark, penetrating gaze. His enormous broadsword clinked against the gleaming silver mail as he hefted the stag.
"Aye, there it is," the wizard replied, "and much danger as well. I fear for the safety of our feminine companions."
"What is there to be afeared?" said the barbarian, depositing his game on the forest floor with a muscular shrug. "There are mighty heroes all, though perhaps," he said with a jocular grin, "not as mighty as myself."
"Indeed, few as strong as the celebrated blood-crusher Kilthrust," the wizard said, "but I have much doubt of our ability to survive the catacombs of the damned without the aid of a sixth soul."
"Then perchances we are in luck," said Kilthrust, "for I think I espy a dwarf."
"As do I," said Grimstar. "Mayhap he will join our quest. Greetings, friend," he addressed the dwarf, who seemed lost in the woods. "We are in need of a brave warrior such as yourself. Would you join in our quest to find the lair of the Dragon King?"
There was an awkward pause. Said the dwarf, "Okay, what do I do now?"
Twilight sighed. "Come on, Applejack, we've been over this."
"Yeah, like 1,000,000,000 times," said Rainbow Dash, rolling her eyes.
"I just don't get this crazy game is all," said Applejack defensively.
"It's just like playing pretend," said Twilight patiently. "Spike and I used to play it all the time back in Canterlot. She'd been trying to get Applejack involved for weeks, but had only recently convinced her to give it a go."
All of Twilight's friends were gathered around an old table in a neglected corner of the library's basement. Dice, reference books, and miniatures were scattered over an intricately drawn map covering most of the table's surface. Applejack sat between Twilight and Dash as they went over the rules one more time. Across from them, Rarity added a few more touches to her character sketch, while Fluttershy tried to avoid the cloud of snack detritus coming from Pinkie Pie's direction. Spike sat at the head of the table, a stack of DM's guides on his chair just barely bringing him up to the others' eye levels.
"Please, Applejack, could you just try to play along?" he said, poking his head above the DM's screen. "Ever since Derpy stopped showing up a few weeks ago, well, we've been short a player for my campaign."
"I'm trying, I swear," she said, "but I really don't see the point, I guess."
"The point is fun, silly McSillerson," said Pinkie Pie, spraying an orange cheesy dust over the table. "You can fight monsters and loot treasure and explore dungeons, pretend to be crazy made-up creatures like elves and dwarves and halflings and humans."
"What's a human?" Applejack said, blinking in the face of the crumbly assault.
"It's just like a pink monkey, only they don't have tails and they're not as hairy and they don't live in trees and..."
"And sometimes they aren't pink," added Twilight.
"And sometimes they aren't pink," finished Pinkie with an excited bounce.
"All right," said Applejack gamely. "Then what's a halfling?"
"The same thing," said Twilight, referring to her player's guide, "but smaller and not so hairy."
"Uh-huh. So what's dwarf?"
"It's... Look, never mind," said Twilight. "Spike put a lot of work into setting up this game, so just try to keep up, okay?"
"Honestly," piped up Rarity, "it really is a lot of fun, Applejack."
"But now I can see Spike and Twilight getting this nerdy stuff," said Applejack. "And Pinkie Pie, and Fluttershy, and maybe even Dash. What in the heck do you see in this, Rarity?"
"Oh, I felt the same way as you did at first, darling," she said. "But it became rather addictive, especially when Spike showed me all of the adorable little figures you can decorate."
"And that, fillies and gentle colts, is the story of how all my miniatures ended up in pretty pink sundresses," said Spike with a scowl, holding up a violently pink orc.
"Spike, dear, that's clearly an evening gown. It's much more formal, you see, and..."
"Look, can we get back to the game?" interrupted Dash. "I've hardly even had time to kill anything."
Grimstar and Kilthrust led their new companions to their camp.
"Allow me to introduce our fellows," said Grimstar. "Alas, where are my manners? I have not asked your name. What are you called, may I ask?"
My name is..." the dwarf said haltingly. Dwarfy. Dwarfer. Son. The dwarf."
"Ah, yes. Very well. Traditional name, I'm certain, said the wizard, and diplomatically. You have already met our barbarian, of course. A terrible braggart he is, though, but there are no better to have by your side in the fray of battle.
I speak only the modest truth, said Kilthrust.
Now played by Keanu Reeves.
If it seems as bragging, you have but your own jealousy to blame.
The great beauty that his darling ever sung, the fair, Grimstar continued.
Charmed. Because that's now George Takei. Charmed, said the elf with an elegant bow, her jewelry jingling against her armor. I look forward to joining your bow with... Oh my. I look forward to joining my bow to your axe.
Our healer, Grimstar said, moving on. Grace loves Silent Tail, a cleric of the Order of the Silver Star.
So, I'm very pleased to meet you, Dwarfy,
the halfling said with a demure courtesy. She wore simple gray robes of her order and clutched a set of prayer beads.
And now, last but not least, said Grimstar, Zinadiana Lyre-Plucker, the 27th, our spoony bard.
Only the best character ever. Okay, Spike, said Applejack. You have to tell me what it...
It's a whatever Pinkie Pie wants it to be. I'm not having this conversation again.
The band of heroes advanced to the edge of the forest, entering the foothills of the Black Mountains of Eldor. Zindiana played a merry tune on her lute as they walked, the bells on her jerkin jingling to the beat.
And never a mighty party there was, oh, never a but...
Be still, you capering bard, lest your head meet the flat of my broadsword.
Yeah, Zinadiana, said Dwarfy. I don't think there are songs necessarily right now, forsooth.
Cease your bickering, fellows, said Grimstar, halting their progress. My staff senses danger.
Oh, God.
My staff senses lots of things. Danger is not one of them.
Ahead of them, just as the forest cleared, lay a pack of dire wolves, snapping at each other over the remaining bones of the recent kill. They had not yet noticed the heroes, and Grimstar took the opportunity to discuss their strategy.
Hold on, I feel that we need sound effects. There we go. A spell of petrifaction would allow us to pass unharmed, he said.
And would leave us open to attack should it fail, said Darlin. A flurry of my arrows will make short work of them.
Nay, Zindiana said. I shall play them to sleep with my magic flute.
Waste not your spells and arrows, said Kilthrust. I will take them on single-handedly.
I want to make friends with them,
said Gracelove.
The entire table groaned collectively.
Not this again,
Spike said, head in his hands.
What? Said Applejack. What's wrong with that?
Oh, you know Fluttershy,
said Pinkie, cracking open another bottle of sarsaparilla.
She just loves fuzzy critters.
Fluttershy, you can't tame any more monsters. You already have 2 beholders, a mind flayer, a kobold,
3 owlbears, half a dozen zombies, said Dash.
and a gelatinous cube, Rarity finished. And I'm sorry, Fluttershy, but you aren't spending any more of our gold pieces on cube food.
But you can't just let Mr. Jiggly starve,
said Fluttershy aghast, her eyes welled up with tears.
The party continued their journey, their new furry companions in tow. Grimstar led them on, forging a path through the twisted ravines and rocky outcrops. The way was difficult, and he paused to consult the ancient scroll for guidance.
The scroll of prophecy speaks of a tunnel which will allow us passage through these mountains, he said. Though it is doubtlessly crawling with peril, it may save us a day's worth of climbing. If only the gods would make their intentions clear that we may decide on the best way forward.
Suddenly, as if the answer to Grimstar's wish, the sky was rent asunder and a fearsome archangel descended, wings blazing with holy light and bare of a flaming sword.
That was convenient,
said Dwarfy.
Verily.
Lo, great heroes of this land, the angel spake in a booming voice. Your tarrying is most displeasing to the gods. I bring it forth their instructions, that you may follow them and move on already.
Kilthrust's eyes lit up at the sight of the magnificent angel.
Finally, a challenge
Worthy of the Blood Crusher, he said, unsheathing his broadsword. Have at thee, winged monster, I fear you not!
What foolishness is this? Said the Archangel, its golden eyes narrowing.
This is most unwise, Killthrust, said Darylyn as she attempted to hold back her comrade.
Indeed, said Grimstar, aiding her efforts. You must not antagonize an emissary of the gods.
Oh, you doubt my strength, said Killthrust, breaking free of their hold. Taste my steel, foul creature! I will take thy wings as my own! He charged forward with a terrible battle cry, his sword tracing a powerful arc towards the angel. A burst of holy light deflected the attack, however, and the angel turned its wrath on the stricken barbarian.
You dare assault me, the angel said in its fury. I, who have guided your quest from the very beginning. If this is how you use your strength, barbarian, perhaps you would do well to be free of it. With this, a bolt of magical lightning struck the fallen warrior.
Arg, I am cursed, he said. What be the heck?
What be the heck, Spike? You can't just curse me.
Actually, he can, said Twilight, checking the rulebook. He's the dungeon master, so technically he can do anything he wants.
Darn right I can, said Spike, leaning over his DM screen at Dash. I'm sick of you screwing up all of my encounters just because you had a few lucky rolls when you were making a character.
That wasn't luck. I'm just better at this than you are, the Pegasus said with a smug grin.
They were dice rolls, said Spike, jumping with anger. That's the definition of luck.
Aren't I supposed to get a saving throw? She said, ignoring him and grabbing Twilight's guide.
You were stunned. You don't get a saving throw.
I have the Talisman of Mystic Barrier, she said, standing up. It protects against curses.
It's a holy curse. It doesn't work, he said, jumping up on the table, marching up to Dash until they were a few inches apart.
Fluttershy can heal me, she said, leaning into his glare.
Fluttershy thinks you're a jerk, he shouted with a furious hop.
What? She does not! She turned to the other Pegasus, who was currently hiding with her head under the table. You don't think I'm a jerk, right, Fluttershy?
Well...
Don't answer that, Fluttershy, Spike said, turning and marching back to his place at the head of the table. That's it. No more Mr. Nice Dungeon Master. He sat down and resumed narrating. You enter the tunnel, and the entrance snaps shut behind you, leaving you trapped.
The ground shook under the party's feet. They squinted into the gloom of the tunnel, but could not make out the source of the massive footsteps. The luminescent sphere rose up from Grimstar's fingertips, casting a pale light on their surroundings.
By the gods, he said. His light fell on their aggressor. It's a stone ogre.
The massive bulk of the ogre filled the tunnel, blocking any route of escape. Its skin was as hard and gray as the tunnel walls around it, and its horrible maw filled with sharp, jagged teeth. It carried the trunk of a fallen oak as its club, and wore a purple muumuu. It let out a mighty roar and hefted its club to attack. It's a dress, very loose-fitting dress.
Whoa, Spike, said Twilight. Don't you think that's a little above our level?
Yeah, that sounds a little serious, agreed Applejack.
I don't care, he said furiously. I spent hours working on this campaign just to have you guys argue and mess it up. You kept pushing me, and now you're gonna have to fight an ogre.
What do we do? What do we do? Panicked Pinkie Pie. I don't know any songs that work on ogres.
I have some armor with bonuses against ogres, said Rarity. Or I would, if some dragon would let me carry more than 3 sets of armor at a time.
Wah, baby wants a bag of holding, said Spike, unmoving. Better do something quick. It's getting closer.
Fluttershy, sick your dire wolves on him, said Dash.
I can't. They might get hurt, she replied from under the table.
Come on, we can do this if we work together, rallied Twilight.
Applejack cleared her throat. Hey guys, what does it mean when the red one says 20?
The table went silent. Spike stared at the D20 in front of Applejack. He coughed.
The massive body of the beast lay still on the tunnel floor. Darlin checked it for treasure while Gracelove worked at healing the party's injuries. The others gathered to congregate at the shocked dwarf, his bloodied axe still clutched in his hands.
A spectacular battle, my lad, said Killthrust, holding aloft the ogre's head. You've earned yourself quite the trophy.
Yeah, that was kinda cool, said Dwarfy. Zounds.
I'll write a new song about it, said Zindiana. The saga, no,
The Epic of Dwarfy McDwarferson.
Well done, said Grimstar, nodding sagely. I knew you would become a valuable member of our band.
Shucks, it weren't any.
He stopped.
Holy pony feathers, what time is it?
Twilight blinked at the clock. Wow, you're right. It's after midnight already? We'd better call it a night.
But, said Spike, still staring at the D20.
But we didn't even get into the catacombs of the damned.
He looked up. Everyone was already getting up to leave.
Sorry, Spike, said Twilight, patting him on the head while it's on her way past. Maybe next time. She gathered her books and headed to the door leading upstairs, the others following her.
Good night, everybody,
said Fluttershy.
It was, wasn't it? Applejack said with a grin.
I told you you'd get hooked.
Rarity said, putting a hoof around Applejack's shoulder.
I'm totally serious about that song, by the way. Pinkie Pie bounced after them.
Spike looked distraught.
You can't. I mean, I didn't.
He pulled himself together and shouted after Dash.
You're still cursed!
You're still a dork, she said, not looking back as she left the room.
Deep in the steam tunnels that twisted like a labyrinth under Ponyville, a small gray Pegasus knelt in the darkness. She waited patiently for the sun to rise in the grate above her, conserving her strength. She smiled grimly in the dripping gloom. Today, she would crush her enemies and see them driven before her. Today, she would hear the lamentations of their women.
Yes, she thought as she sharpened her halberd, today will be a good day.
End.
Or is it?
Yes. Yes, it is. But there's a sequel now. Click here to read it. But we're not going to read that today. Sorry, guys. I'm going to save more of these for whenever I happen to get more people over at my house. But look! Episodes! You get episodes! And things that were requested. And fancy artwork and... Goodbye!